she is the reason I was able to do this, because she is part of the Media and Democracy Fund and saw fit to be the lead sponsor. The premise of this next section is simply our sponsors all have a stake in internet freedom, and I want to give them a brief chance to explain what that stake is. So Helen, tell us about the Media Democracy Fund.
So I won't take much of your time. The Media Democracy Fund is something that I started in 2006. There was very little philanthropy being dedicated to this world that we all hold so dear and so important. As we know, the rules that govern this space are being made now, and technologies that will help protect human rights as we go forward are also being developed. And yet there really isn't enough support in the to really have this world be as robust as it could be. So I went around to a number of foundations and donors and worked to convince them that this particular issue of communications rights really cut across all of the areas that they were funding in, and the developments that were happening in technology and in the fields of technology policy and media policy were going to have an effect on their work, be it for good or for bad. And so our fund is now composed of a number of foundations that work in areas like the environment, like the arts and culture, civil society, good government. It's journalism, media. It's a variety of people who believe as firmly as you all do that this is an area where, as people move online, human rights need to move online. And our work is firmly grounded in the human rights, and in the digital age, communication rights are no longer a singular standalone right. They are the gateway right to many other rights, like the right to assemble, for instance, or the right to health care, or the right to a living wage. So this is one reason why we're funding in this area. We fund in a number of different ways. We have an annual docket of we have about 30 grantees, 30 to 35 grantees, depending. We've worked to broaden the base of the movement and engage those constituencies whose lives are affected by these policies every day and these technologies every day, but who have not previously had a voice in the debates, so we work on that. We are able, fortunately because of our structure, to fund lobbying as well as traditional C3 work, and then we do some contracts with individuals as well when it makes sense to do that, or firms for research. We fund everything from academics to NGOs to lawyers to organizing groups. And so that's our work. But to us, this opportunity to connect, funding convenings is terribly important, and giving people an opportunity to meet face-to-face is part of our strategy as well. So thank you.
What is your, well, thank you. What is your single or 2 or 3 examples of big projects that you're funding?
Okay, so we started a group called Center for Rights, which is known in this crowd probably more as Fight for the Future. They are brand new. They are working to organize users for internet rights. They had a lot to do with the SOPA internet strike in January. We funded Sasha Meinrath in his early work and seeded the work of the Open Technology Institute at New America Foundation, fund Native Public Media, fund one of our key grantees you're about to hear from on the next panel, Chris Mitchell from the New Rules Project of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, is extraordinary, doing amazing work on muni broadband. So it's a variety of things. Center for Rural Strategies, critically important that tribal lands and rural lands be considered in this equation as we go forward.
Well, help me thank Helen for stepping up and being lead sponsor of Freedom to Connect. Thank you so much. Okay, Rick Whitt unfortunately was called away on Google business. Google has been a small but consistent sponsor of this activity right along. And I should point out that despite what you see on the boards from certain people, we have said some things that are contrary to Google's interests in the last 2 days. I feel we should be distrustful of the kinds of data collection that they're involved in. So far, they have not been, they have not gone over my personal line of don't be evil. But I respect the fact that for some of members of this audience, they might have gone over the line. And I am, have a healthy skepticism of Google. They are very big and they know very much. Nevertheless, we thank them for being part of Freedom to Connect. John Wonderlich from the Sunlight Foundation. And then Will. Okay, good. And then Elliot. Okay. 5 minutes or so.
All right, so I don't. Hopefully, I won't need nearly 5 minutes. But I want to say it's a pleasure to be with you here this afternoon. And Sunlight is very proud and excited to sponsor again the Freedom to Connect conference. In part because, so in case you don't know, the Sunlight Foundation, sunlightfoundation.com, we're about 5 years old and dedicated to a more transparent and accountable government. So it's really more about government reform than internet type issues. But the reason that I'm here is that we view government reform and accountable government as an internet issue. If any organization has approached that through the lens of technology, it's been Sunlight. And that's why in the 5 years of our existence, we've expanded dramatically, because we're approaching this from a perspective that other organizations really haven't approached it from before. And really over the last year or maybe 2 years, we've seen a bunch of different issues on a collision course. I don't have to tell you all this, but net neutrality, internet freedom, corporate power, freedom of speech, all these issues in a lot of ways are becoming the same issue. This was first true for us when we saw the WikiLeaks takedowns occur, because we thought that could very easily have been us, given a different government. This was also true in the fight over CISPA, where we don't usually take positions on that kind of thing, but we decided to come out against it because it would have empowered the government, given a certain type of government, to take down sites that we run. It didn't get a lot of attention, but one of the provisions in CISPA said that if government information had been misappropriated, then the Attorney General could take it down. Anybody that's ever run a scraper of a government website has probably met people that would consider scraping government data misappropriation. And if that term is undefined, then we're empowering people that represent government information to take it down. On top of that, CISPA also had a ridiculous FOIA exemption that increasingly we're seeing new exemptions to the Freedom of Information Act proposed with very little thought to a balance of the public interest. It's really, let's get transparency out of the way because governments or specific corporations demand it. So the question that we're confronted with all the time is, in whose service does government information exist? And often it's for the government service or for industry's service that has specialized access to it, and we're trying to change that. And I think that you're all confronting the same question, which in a slightly different context, which is, in whose service does the network exist? And I guess what I just wanted to share is that increasingly for Sunlight, we feel like those are the same question, that if the network doesn't exist in everyone's service, then government information and important civic information cannot exist in everyone's interests. So the things that we're fighting for, things like campaign finance and lobbying disclosure, that will help a little bit to change how influence and power in DC works. I don't want to overstate that, especially since Lawrence Lessig's in the audience, but it will help a little bit to change how power works. Also, we're trying to change how access to the information of government, like legislation, functions. So if I wanted to suggest one thing to try out of Sunlight's, go to scout.sunlightfoundation.com. It's our new service that lets you track provisions in legislation. And if your work depends on a specific legal provision, so if you want to track FOIA, it would be 5 USC 552. You can put in any word or phrase, and if it comes up in a speech in Congress, a bill on the state level, a pending regulation, a regulatory comment, if that phrase comes up, it'll email you immediately anytime it's there. And this is already changing the way that we process, in my work, FOIA exemptions, because there's 10 different ways that they can write into a law, we're going to make a new exemption for what has to be disclosed. And having an email come immediately when they propose it We're getting one rewritten right now on the FDA as a result of a positive hit from this search. So if there's some part of your work that deals with a law or provision or specific phrase, put it in there. It's free. It'll email you every time a phrase comes up. So anyway, it's a real pleasure for us to support Freedom to Connect and to be here with you, spend a little bit of time together. I think our assumption is that online transparency is only going to be as powerful as access is equitable, and I'm glad we have so many people with whom we have common cause that are fighting to keep access equitable. So thank you.
All right, thank you. The Mozilla Foundation is directly responsible for getting Oakland local to be able to be here, and they're also paying some other travel expenses, and we're very grateful for your support. Will Barkis from the Mozilla Foundation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the chance to speak. I don't think I need to tell anybody that Mozilla Foundation is deeply committed to the freedom to connect. Its very existence is all about, the guarding the openness of the internet. So the openness of the internet, open nature, is very important, and that's because, as our executive director Mark Sermon put it, openness and participation are essential to the core of the web. They're the core logic of the web. What we add or detract from the web is what actually creates the web itself. So that's not everyone's logic, obviously, and as Aaron Schwartz told a beautiful story yesterday, we need to be ever vigilant, obviously. I don't know if Aaron's still here, but thanks for that. That was amazing. So I'd like to take most of my time to tell you about a new initiative that the Mozilla Foundation is working on called Mozilla Ignite. And it sort of exemplifies our efforts to push forward the openness of the future internet. So the internet's changed our lives. I don't think I need to convince anyone of that here. But we believe that there are things you can do, or things that we can do that are not possible on today's internet. And these things are things that have real impact on people's lives. We're not the only ones who have this vision, and so we think this is part of a sort of deployment of next generation networking technologies, and we want to make sure that they're open, and we want to make sure that they serve the public good. So think of email or the web as kind of examples of killer apps on today's internet. A culture of experimentation and openness were key to the creation of those apps. So we think the same sort of culture of experimentation and openness is key to the development of these future technologies and applications of these future networking technologies. So again, to that end, Mozilla's Ignite is about creating a community to create these killer apps on these future internet technologies, networking technologies. And what I'm talking about, let me unpack it a little, is an ultra high-speed, deeply programmable network. So it's got three features: a gigabit per second connectivity, symmetrical. I think initially we were talking a tenth of that, so 100 megabits per second. It is layer 2 programmable across the entire network, so you're not dependent on TCP/IP based routing. You can try out whatever new protocol you want, and it also means you can put your software throughout the entire network, from the firewalls to routers, not just at the endpoints or the edge. And finally, the network is sliceable, so these different sort of allocations of network resources running a protocol can be run in parallel, and that means, well, for one, it's backward compatible with regular internet, but you can try out different experiments all at the same time, and initially something around 10,000, I think, is what the number of slices were sort of set up to handle. So Mozilla Ignite is related to this larger US Ignite initiative you've probably all heard about. And actually, I come to Mozilla, and this is day 2 of Mozilla, so I'm very happy to be speaking on their behalf. But from the National Science Foundation, where I worked for the last year and a few months on US Ignite, and it's really the effort of Susie Iacono over there and a bunch of other people. I see John Pihas in the audience, who's at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy when this came into being, and Nick Maynard there, and there are a bunch of people who've really worked hard on this. But very briefly, US Ignite is a public-private partnership to sort of bring together the people and the resources and investments that a lot of communities have made in these technologies, with the goal of creating killer apps that have real impact on people's lives in a set of national priority areas. So health, education and workforce training, manufacturing, transportation, energy, and finally public safety. So there's six areas. So the way US Ignite works is pretty straightforward and very simple. It is a set of amazing infrastructure that's being pulled together. It's stimulating the creation of a few killer apps, just a handful, and then it's opening up the platform to anyone else who wants to innovate on it. So this is a place for experimentation and openness, to get back to these themes. Sharing best practices, trying out stuff, seeing what works and what doesn't, and all that. So let me reiterate, the entire network itself is programmable, and it's a little bit what Eben Moglen talked about this morning, or what he called for is infrastructure that allows young people to hack the real world and share the results. So I think this is an attempt to do that to some extent, but he also framed our greatest challenge, which I think is creating a generation of makers, or empowering everyone to make. So that's, and in fact, Mark Sermon, our executive director, has sort of articulated that as one of the Mozilla Foundation's biggest challenges. How do you create web makers, or the makers of future internet? And so this is, again, where sort of Mozilla Ignite comes into the US Ignite picture. It's a partnership with the National Science Foundation to create community, to create these killer apps. And we're doing that through a number of ways, but initially we're going to do some prize competitions. So do 2 flavors: ideation challenges, where we brainstorm, get people to give great ideas about what killer apps actually are, and then app developer challenges, where we actually create some prototypes. Anyway, I'll give you a couple quick examples of what these might look like, 'cause it's hard to get your head around without thinking of examples, just really quickly. So something like, very high definition, high resolution, uncompressed, essentially real-time audio and video. This is obviously going to be amazing. Flexible networks that come into existence as you need them. So a group at UMass Amherst is working on low-cost, highly deployable radar that you would only need when the storm is actually going, so you could track a tornado, right then. I'll skip other examples. There's just imagine what's possible. There's a lot that can be done, and so we want to make sure that the tools are there for public good, to build a community around these technologies that cares about this, and we want to make everyone a web maker on the future internet. So let's see. So if your curiosity is piqued, my contact is will@mozillafoundation.org. I'd love to hear if you have any actual killer app ideas. That'd be great. Also, please prepare your institutions to enter these, brainstorming challenges. And we have a website, it's mozillaignite.org. We have a listserv there. Follow us on Twitter, it's @MozillaIgnite. And the broader US Ignite initiative is in soft launch mode, sort of, but it's gearing up towards a major announcement on June 14th. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And thanks for your time, and thanks for all the hard work everyone in the room has done on Freedom to Connect. Really appreciate it.
And now we have Elliot Noss from Ting, who's generously climbed on board this moving train to support Freedom to Connect. Thanks, Elliot. Tell us what Ting is. Ting.
Yeah, Ting is a mobile service that Two Cows has recently launched. I think that we've heard a couple days of great discussion around networks and network access, and one of the things that's pretty stark and clear to us is that this has all been about fixed, and I think that's right. It's been about fixed network access, but today more and more of our actual data consumption is on the mobile network, and we're all carrying around our little computers in our pocket on data networks in a market that is still very much treated like a phone voice market, and we thought that there were some great opportunities to do a little bit of innovation there, and so much of the brilliant work we're seeing done in community broadband is these little points of light that are deeply local, deeply specialized, deeply neighborhood, and that's fantastic. Sadly, mobile takes a bit of scale, and we were lucky enough that we had a big enough platform, a big enough set of customers, and a big enough business that we could kind of take what is a massive market, the U.S. mobile market, and be small enough to kind of come in underneath it and hack it a little. So, I think the first big thing I'd like to call out is, there is an opportunity, I think, to innovate in the mobile space. At the beginning, it's going to be, and it is primarily today, just around taking some of the silly, fat excess profits that Susan talked so nicely about yesterday that are in the U.S. mobile market, and just do kind of much more fairer, transparent pricing. But I think there's a couple other pieces on the mobile side that need to be called out, and there is we're really, as long as there are no there are no none of my corporate handlers here. We are much more lenient, I guess I would say, in letting people hack their devices. We not only sort of encourage them to remove any software they don't like from the devices that we provide. We have a nice hack section in our forum where our customers are sharing the work that they're doing there. We're definitely pushing Sprint, I should say. We're built on the Sprint network, and Sprint has actually been a pretty good, very good partner, and it's a pretty darn good network. And we're pushing them really hard around device transportability. I mean, it's amazing how your devices get locked down to your network in such a painfully hard way. When we're talking about open platforms, mobile is the most closed of platforms, and we're sort of big enough to be able to get inside that world, but small enough where we can not only let people do neat things on our devices and on our platform, but we can do it without really getting our hands slapped yet. And so I think that there are, inside of the mobile world, it's a lot more constrained than the fixed world is. And because of that, we need the cloak or the patina of being a respectable company that's public with a pretty good set of revenue streams, so that the rest of the world can take us seriously. But inside of this room, we can really, really be pretty aggressive around things. So it's ting.com, and as is like to do for anything that David is doing, there is a discount code at f2c.ting.com that if it's not up now, will be within the hour. Thanks.
So just for one second,
Please.
I just want to say...
I saw you walking
yeah.
here, and I was thinking,
Well,
it was at 3.5 minutes, but if you're walking, I'm out.
almost
Yeah.
everyone gets the hook when
right.
I come up on stage, but you're an exception. Because I want to tell you, I have one of Elliot's data-only products.
The MiFis,
It's a Ting wireless hotspot, manufactured by Huawei, which is notable of itself.
Us and the Chinese government now know everything that David surfs, so if you're interested, let me know.
And if I happen to use a lot of data in a given month, it moves me up into the next tier. But then in the following month, if I don't use the very much data, it moves me back down into the lowest tier, which is something that I don't think anybody in the mobile space does.
It's an industry that's built on intimidating customers into overbuying and then hoping they don't use anything. So it's this really badly broken model, and we just went in with a really, really simple, low-cost structure. We make a little bit of money on everything we sell, so we can afford to do that.
Okay.
Great,
So,
thanks.
Thanks, Elliot, for supporting Freedom to Connect. Can you find any musicians out in the hallway? Because we're ready for a break. And then we'll come back and, all right.